So what is the status of your golf game?
It's just terrible.
Okay.
But
it exists,
Oh,
right?
it does. Yeah,
That's
I have
good.
golf clubs and everything. Sometimes I have more balls in my bag than 2, so it's great. The story goes, though, 6 weeks ago, I guess now, I sprained my ankle really bad to the point where I woke up the next morning and I almost fell down the stairs, like chasing after the kids. I don't know if I've told the story before, but it was bad enough to where that next morning we had to get somebody to come over to watch all the kids so that we could go to Ortho Indy's urgent care facility. And they were like, "Yeah, you didn't break anything, but you sprained it pretty bad, but you're probably going to wish you broke it." And so 6 weeks on, I've canceled numerous rounds of golf. I wouldn't cancel a round at Crooked Stick, and quite literally, a couple of the members like drove by us as we were getting away from a tee, and they're like, "Hey, that's great technique," because I would basically swing, pick my back leg up, and start hopping on my front leg. So it was a disaster. And so that's been about 3 or 4 weeks now. And so this weekend, the club championship, which is a 3-day tournament, so 18 holes each day, I wasn't going to sign up, and I thought signed up, and then I get the text reminder that, "Hey, club championship participants, here's the format." And so apparently at the beginning of the season I signed up. And I'm like, well, now I feel bad, so I guess I'll go ahead and play. And the first day out, I somehow found my way into the lead. And then the second day, I absolutely lost that lead. The third day, my kids came out and watched me for a couple of holes, and I had a quad on a par 3. It was embarrassing, but it still hurts. But my golf game hurts worse, and so whatever. But it's fine. I'm looking forward to playing with you guys before too long, the end of next month. So
Yeah,
that'd be great.
I've been trying to find my game. I'm coming off surgery on my wrist from November, and it's taken me a long time to get back, and hit balls twice over this weekend, and it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
I almost snapped a club. I wanted to snap a club.
I may have thrown a couple clubs into the ground pretty hard. It was a little embarrassing in front of my kids, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there are other hobbies out there. Just saying.
there are.
It's true.
There are, but this one, it's a life skill. It's a life skill. You got to teach your kids. You learn more about a person in a 4-hour round of golf than most people beat, and you spend more time with anywhere else because it's just 1-on-1 usually, or 2-on-2, whatever. And you're just really getting to know that person through how they act and respond. And so even if I'm mad at myself, I always try to make sure I say nice things about the other people so they don't know I'm a complete jerk or anything like that, just to myself. So
There you go, folks.
Yeah.
Golf and
Wow.
life lessons.
To spend 4 hours with somebody, it's a long time.
It is. I notice our rounds only take about 2.5 hours, so that makes sense.
Well, when you hit every fairway,
Yeah.
green in regulation 18 times in a row, and maybe about 22 putts around, it goes pretty fast.
It goes pretty quick. It does.
Yeah. Rory.
Speaking of
Played
which,
well.
so another little side story. We were at IWF, which is the International Woodworking Fair down in Atlanta last week. Coincidentally, a lot of the players, if not all of them, were staying at the same place. And Thursday morning, our last day there, we'd already seen a couple of different players throughout the week, and sitting there, there's a coffee line right literally right next to where we're sitting. And I just happened to kind of look up from my phone and saw a guy holding a daughter, and I did a double take, like, holy shit, that's Roy McIlroy. I'm like, he kind of looks at me like, "Hey, Roy." He's like, "Morning."
Yeah.
That was it. And I turned back to these guys like, pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. That's
So
awesome.
you know who we were rooting for yesterday.
I could guess. Yeah.
I'm glad
For
that
sure.
came about.
Yeah. He played well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hanging out,
Yeah.
coffee line, hotel lobby, gym clothes, pushing his daughter's little play stroller around to 4 days later having another $18 million in his pocket.
It's terrible. Must be awful to be Rory.
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
How do you walk around with $18 million in your pocket? Like you'd fall over.
Yeah, it would. It would be a problem. That's a big check too. Really big check.
Yeah. Hopefully that wasn't windy.
Well, we'll get into whether you guys catch those checks or not.
All right. Yeah,
All right.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Industrious Podcast. Thank you for joining us today from wherever you get your podcasts. And if you happen to be tuning in on the Assessa YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. If you haven't subscribed, hit the little subscription button there, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can learn or be alerted when new episodes drop. Today's guest is Mr. Mike Bogers from the National Bank of Indianapolis. Mr. Boogers, welcome to the Industrious Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you introduce yourself, if you would?
Yeah, so I'm Mike Bogers, Commercial Relationship Manager with the National Bank of Indianapolis, located here in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's been a long road to get here, kind of interesting career path, I would say. I grew up in northwest suburbs of Chicago and decided to come down here for school. And the joke goes, I really just wanted to get away from my family. I didn't care what it cost, and so I went to DePaul University in Greencastle, which still am paying student loans, and mine will not be forgiven, so that's always nice. And it was the only place I wanted to go. I really, really loved it here. And thinking back to 96, 95 or thereabouts when I visited campus, to what it looks like today, it's remarkable, the differences and the changes, and just in aesthetics and also overall philosophy. So it's kind of crazy. But came out of school in 01, and there wasn't a whole lot of great opportunities in 01 for jobs. And so I put my name in a hat for several, didn't really find a good fit, and decided because of the student loans I needed to get to work. And so a bank here in Indianapolis called the Union Planners Bank out of Memphis and Nashville, Tennessee, decided to hire me. It's formerly would have been Indiana National, INB, and BD, and BD for Chicago. And so I worked there in retail management, which retail banking, oh boy, it's something else. I mean, it is retail in general is some of the toughest jobs for sure out there, and retail banking has got to be one of the least exciting for sure. But
what makes it so? Just out of curiosity.
I'm going to make sure we spread this podcast out to all your retail colleagues.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's really hard because you see, and the rest of the bank doesn't fully understand it. I believe personally that everyone from the CEO down should be able to run a teller cage, should know how to balance a book or balance a cage and a drawer. And what it really comes down to is they are everything. And if you forget about that, the fact that the one interaction can take a relationship, even the biggest commercial relationship, can be great one day, and then they have a really bad interaction in a banking center, which is a whole different topic, and the whole relationship can turn. And so it's really a lot of thankless effort. They're not as well rewarded as they probably should be, and that you can extrapolate that in any which way you want to. And I think we're seeing that now with the jobs issues, people looking for more recognition or more control, and they don't want to be in that teller window or managing a banking center, just because it's not as rewarding maybe as they had hoped. And so when I came out of college, I really felt like that may not have been where I wanted to be ultimately, and I think it probably on some days you could see it on my face, and my friends and family at that time would probably have said, yeah, we need to get him out of there as fast as possible. But 5 years later, I rolled into credit, really learning how do you look at banking opportunities from varied industries, right? I have no specification. I really am a at-large banker where I can take in any kind of industry and any walk of life or any stage of the business. So I learned it from there, and then in 2008 I moved into full-on commercial relationship management. And so I've been just a couple of banks in the city, but the National Bank of Indianapolis is where I am now and where I want to be going forward. It's just one of those places that marries how I want to look at a client relationship, where they feel like I actually care about them and I know them and I know the depth of their family, and by that also their employee base. And the bank does that too. Like, the bank really believes that every single one of our clients matters, where I think a larger institution, even the ones I've come from, I would suggest many of them were just a number on a page somewhere in another state, where we're here, we're local, we're only here. We obviously will travel across borders with our clients, but for the most part it's just Indianapolis specifically, and that has afforded us an opportunity. And the bank was founded by the Maurer family, and Mickey and Maury, when they founded the bank, had a philosophy that you really can't move outside of the collar counties until you banked every credit-worthy client in the collar counties. Well, that's impossible, right? You're never going to have 100% market share.
Right.
And so that was a very interesting philosophy, and it's afforded us the opportunity to really zero in on the clients that we want to bank with and we want to have as clients. And I think it served them well, from starting in the early 90s to today, growing from zero to $3.5 billion in assets. It's a big feat. And the people that came on, there's a group of like 26 at the beginning in 93, and many of them are still employed with the bank, which is crazy when you think about that. High client retention, high customer overall retention, and then high employee retention. And it's all because of the way the bank is founded. And that's why I think, eventually we'll probably talk about why you'd want to bank at an institution of our size or our maybe central focus. And it's really all that. You all matter, and it feels very different. So.
Yeah, we
briefly
mentioned this.
Did you rehearse that in front of a mirror?
Boy,
that was well, like the whole monologue.
It's one of those things that they really drive into. No, I'm just kidding. It's when it's something you believe in, you really know that the people in leadership believe it too. It's easy.
Yeah.
So
we're in a relationship-focused business. Anybody can buy paint from anyone just about. So why do they buy from us? Same thing we kind of touched on with you earlier. What do you feel is the biggest key in terms of relationship with your customers, or what you've seen in the banking industry in general, that I guess makes you feel comfortable with client retention?
Yeah, I think 08 and maybe even this particular recessionary period that we're in now, it's how you I have an old friend who's an investment manager, investment broker, and he said any guy, any girl that if they put a bunch of stocks up on the wall could throw a dart at the target and hit and make money in a good market. You really make your bones with your client when it's a bad market or when something bad's happened. And though I wasn't at the National Bank of Indianapolis in 08 and 09 and 10, there was a flight to safety, and a lot of people think that you had to be safe, you had to go to a big bank. Well, people believe that our balance sheet and the people that were leading our bank were so good that there was no risk to the bank at that time either. And they saw a flight to safety to the National Bank of Indianapolis. And that, I think, really is everything. Why do clients want to bank with us? It's because we know them, and we have the ability to, in a lot of ways, make decisions that wouldn't be made at other institutions, because once you get to a certain point in a larger institution, by that I mean the business has, say, maybe had a bad financial year or maybe a couple of years in a row, that will likely put you on a road into being in a workout department or a special assets division that really is there to try to ascertain whether or not you're going to make it. Well, that's like our job, right? We want to make sure that we know you, and at the National Bank of Indianapolis, the management and the leadership and the skills that they possess and the advisors that are around, CPAs, attorneys, insurance, all those, the guys and girls that are their core group of people around them, we'll take a look at all of it and try to understand, okay, how, if they get themselves into a position that they maybe other companies wouldn't get themselves out of, why can the Todds get themselves out of it? What is it about them? And I think that's what really played out during those really hard cycles. And obviously in 08, that was a banking-centric problem. Now, 2021 and 2, it's not a banking-centric problem. It's completely reversed, because now you have banks with so much money on their balance sheets because the government has dumped money into the market to try to make sure that the whole system doesn't collapse. The banks are very liquid. Now it's a matter of switching that liquidity into asset earning or earning assets. So try to figure out how can we find more people that need our money that fit into our model. And so I think that's kind of what sets us apart to some extent and pushes us forward.
Do you know what I just took from that?
Yes.
Free sample day.
Sure. Yeah,
It's always tomorrow, right?
It's on my trunk. I got it. Don't worry about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
He said sample day, yes. Free.
I heard
not
so much cash that,
Yeah.
it just, that's what you say, what I hear.
You are so good at hearing what I'm putting down. It's impressive.
Nice.
You're picking it up. You got it. It's smart. 100%.
Well, you know us. We're not short for ideas and opportunities to put some of that to work.
Absolutely.
Sometimes
100%.
people just say we're short.
Yeah.
I'm like, thanks, Mom.
This is true
Yeah.
as well. Right.
Got it.
So you were starting to go down this path, but not quite. So I'm going to ask the logical question here is crystal ball time.
Sure.
lot of different theories out there right now, from soft landing to holy shit, this is going to be a lot worse than people think. What's what you're seeing on the finance side? What do you think about 2023 at this point?
Yeah, I think, and again, just wholly just crystal ball-esque, so have no full understanding or grasp, and I don't honestly know if anybody does to see what's going to happen. But I think that no matter how you define a recession, you're in one just by the classical definition. And so I to some extent, understand why there's some ability and why, and I mean, in general, there's such a weird political issue right now, but why people are willing to give some latitude on, we're not in a recession. Yeah, it says that we're in a recession, but we're not in a recession, because there are so many other forces that don't make any sense. Because if you look at the unemployment number at 3.5, if you look at, all of the, sort of some of it is slowed down, but the housing starts, and you look at people that are actually signing up for unemployment or want to try to get into the unemployment side of the relief from an economic standpoint, those numbers are traditionally not the same for a true recessionary period, right? You usually see spikes in those things, people not able. You counteract that, which is good information, with the inflationary numbers, and you look at, and there's a couple of different ways that people look at inflation, right? You have the normal bundle of goods, but you exclude gas and food costs, and that's been a pretty rock solid number, and it's been pretty high. I would say that especially in 2020, 21 more so probably, without looking at the fuel and food costs, you were shorting, and we pushed up into 9, 10, 11% inflation. We were way above that number. Like it's almost impossible, because you think about it, if you're not willing to look at the fuel, you're not not willing to look at the food, and then you go out there and you try to get your car towed, and you realize that the fuel surcharge is 40% of what just the travel is, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. And so you've got two sides that are trying to argue against it, and part of our whole societal problem right now is we're not willing to see each other's perspectives at all. So looking into 2023, I think we'll probably continue, as we were talking about before, see those rates ratchet up. I think that, when the Fed came out and said recently out in Utah that, we're not going to slow down, we have to continue because we believe inflation is more rampant, or however they worded it. And, we had a thought, and there was a belief maybe in the markets that we might see a little bit more ramp up and then some kind of curtailment in 2023. And it all but dissuaded that, or persuaded everyone to believe that's not going to happen now. So I think that you're probably going to see more mortgage rate increases. It's just going to happen. So those rates, and as again we were talking about before we started, the rates now on a 30-year fixed are normal, but they don't feel normal when you've had it built into your psyche for a long period of time. And so I think again, we're going to see supply chain hasn't been figured out yet. The employment, that's the more baffling one. I can understand the supply chain, the constraints associated with moving things overseas, or just the logger jams that we're seeing, at the ports or anything like that. I get the supply chain. It's the workforce demand, the human capital side of the supply chain that I just don't understand at all. And so you would think, and I've tried to rationalize it in this way, a lot of those people tried to start their own businesses, or try to better themselves, or try to go back to school, or something along those lines. Well, let's just look at the business avenue. The success rate of new businesses hasn't changed. It's still like a 90% failure rate. Mm-hmm. So at some point you would think that those people would enter back into the workforce. They would find their way back to those jobs. And then the second part of that is what we're having issues with, or maybe not just us, but employers in general, the expectations of the salary or the benefits that are going to come along with it, and the reality are still nowhere near them. They're totally diametrically opposed. What I will say is that the reality's floor has raised, right? We understand as business owners now that our previous expectation and reality of what we would be able to pay someone to get to do a job is no longer the case. And so en masse, that has been elevated. But the supply side, their expectations of what they should demand in the marketplace is still not where the expectations of reality in general are. And so I don't know how that corrects itself. I don't know how you get there until desperation kicks in. And if we continue to have inflation, as many people would ask, where are these people making any money? How are they paying their bills?
Right.
And so if you look at, deferrals on student loans, and you looked at how long they rent deferred places, and you looked at all of those things, there had to have been a breaking point. If there isn't already passed, there should be one coming up fairly soon. And I want people to be happy in their jobs, but I really want us to be able to function as a society and grander as a world where we all are interconnected, no matter how you look at it. I mean, the Ukrainian issue has really shown that I didn't know how much wheat came out of Ukraine. I didn't know how much any of that I would,
Right.
And it's slammed markets all over the world because of it. So.
What would you say of the clients that you have, and you have clients from a variety of industries, what are they coming to you with the most right now? I mean, what are the challenges they're presenting, or when they come to you to talk about their business, what are they looking for right now from a bank relationship?
Yeah, I think the tide has shifted mightily. So when you got away from PPP and you got away from the ERTC, you got away from the payroll protection program, and you got away from the employee retention tax credit, where millions of dollars were funneled into businesses, and the ownership and leadership team looked at their balance sheet and they saw several $100,000 to millions of dollars in cash just sitting there, and they got really accustomed to that. And so they stopped the debt side. They just stopped it. And then maybe 12 months into that, they started to see those numbers start to dwindle, and they still weren't taking cash. And as one client explained it to me, family-owned business, he's like, it's like they think it's Christmas every day, and they're just taking money out of my pocket. Well, first of all, it's your business. Second, you have a whole bunch of unused capital from me, an investment. And I think people forget sometimes that the bank is not, we're issuing debt, yes, but it's the investment we take in businesses. And I think that, again, is the National Bank of Indianapolis it's the way that we really look at it, is we want to invest in businesses. We don't just want to give you money to go out and do whatever, or working capital purposes, or capital expenditure monies. We want to invest in you for your vision for where you want to take the business. And I think that the dial has turned back to, I want to hold on to some of this cash. I want to actually use some of the debt you say you want to give me. And in many cases, the old adage is the bank always wants to give you money when you don't need it. Well, ask for money when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, you've got it, right? And so those things are sometimes not necessarily in the business owner's mind. I'm starting to see people take out those capital expenditure deals. They're actually using those funds to buy equipment rather than to use cash to buy the equipment. And so I think that's really one of the main turns. There was a really unique, so we had a lot of mergers and acquisitions activity, especially in 2021, because they were so flush with cash, and there was a point in which the sellers were so flush with cash, and many of them did well during the beginning of the pandemic, that they're like, if I'm going to cash out, I'm going to cash out right now. And there were willing buyers. It's slowed down for sure. I think people are either digesting a lot of those acquisitions, or they're focusing on their main business line and trying to expand it out. And so we are seeing less probably M&A activity, and more back to that working capital function, where we've had lines of credit for 2 years that have had no advances, none. And so, from the inner side of the bank, any dollar that not any dollar, but near every dollar that I promise to you in a commitment, I have to reserve for, right? And so it costs me money if you don't utilize it. That's why we charge some commitment fees, just to have something there. And then the due diligence fees, we usually ask the borrowers to hold on to, so that we can try not to have to spend money on things that aren't going to actually earn us any assets or any revenue. And so that, I think we're really seeing now, from a point at which those things just sat, and so we were paying on things that weren't being utilized, but we were still offering. So, I mean, you could have called me that next day and asked for it, and we would have given it to you, to now, you still have it, and we're actually getting some kind of return on it. So, and this is not a secret, but as the interest rates rise, we obviously make more money. And so you hope that balances it out by whatever you're able to charge on the services or the provide or the products you provide, so that in the end it's still about neutral. But so that 2023, I'm going to guess that the clients are going to continue through that. We see people even now in the rising rate environment, we're seeing people refinance buildings or acquire buildings, and they're not so much worried about the interest rates as they continue to go up. Though, as we were talking about before, the last time the Fed increased the benchmark rates, long-term rates actually fell. It was counterintuitive, but it actually drove longer-term prospects down with the increase in the short-term rates. So hard to say what's going to happen in the next Fed meeting, where they're going to go outside. I'm pretty sure they're going to increase rates one more time this fiscal year. If it's not September, it'll be October, or whenever they have the opportunity to do so. But 2023, still shot in the dark, but I'm going to guess we're going to see more people using debt even at the higher interest rates.
Yeah. So we know that we're in technical recession, which we've obviously narrowed down to just by a definition.
Yeah.
When I look at our business, when I look at other people in our industry, either upstream or downstream from us, when I ask people in different industries, some that are very capital intensive. For example, yesterday evening, I was talking to a gentleman who owns a business, and they are they're in the construction industry. And I said, what does your business look like? Not really now, because a lot of that capital has already been committed, but what do new orders look like? Are you seeing any impact with rising rate environment or a slowdown in investment that has new orders slowing down? He said, we're still slammed today, and new orders are coming in just as busy as they have been the last couple of years, which is encouraging to me, because it tells me that there are still people out there that have the willingness or the taste for investment, whether it be new builds or renovation, whatever it may be. And this is all on the commercial side. Within our industry, we ask a lot of our kitchen cabinet manufacturers, who are almost entirely residential, single family residential. And that spectrum is from a $250,000 to $300,000 value home to $5-10 million value home. So it's just a very broad range there, who are saying that their backlogs are still anywhere from 2 to 6 months, most of which are in that 4 to 6 month range. And new orders coming in the door remain very busy. The worst news we've heard is, well, there's a little bit of a slowdown, but we don't mean slowdown like it's getting slow. It's just coming back to some sort of pre-pandemic normal, which in our world would be great if slow meant normal. So that being said, when you look at where our industry is and where our company specifically is in the business cycle, we are not on the downslope towards, heading back towards equilibrium, and we are not below equilibrium. If anyone knows the 4 stages of the business cycle, A, B, C, D, I would say we are probably somewhere towards the top side of B. Being optimistic, mid-slope, pessimistic, almost going into C. Again, that's crystal ball,
Sure.
Right? So my question to you is, if you say we're in technical recession, not you, but the economists say we're in technical recession, do you have clients that fit in any particular industry or market buckets that are telling you, yes, I am feeling recession? And if so, what would those buckets be? How would you label those buckets by industry, market, what have you?
Yeah, I can actually, it's a quick answer. None of my clients are really pointing to what they would categorize as a traditional recession. So even in the the manufacturer and distribution side, I wouldn't say that anyone has made any mention of it. In the warehousing side, nobody has said anything about it. It really, even in the hospitality side, I would say that as costs continue to increase, and you can go to any restaurant and feel that. I mean, the dollar menu is now $1.99. It's
Right.
all of those things. I haven't seen or had any clients approach me with real concerns. I would say that one of my larger relationships probably has seen a softening but it's weirdly soft. They've seen that, that client is a manufacturer and distributor, and it's kind of, again, he would categorize it as a weirdly softened spot because the demand hasn't slowed. But he can see something in the numbers that said, okay, here's a normalized, maybe back to your point, Joe, like a normalized position that they haven't felt in 2 years. And so he's not worried about it. He's just seeing it that way. I would say that back to, another client who got absolutely, like his whole business had to stop because he did a lot of construction of displays for where you were in Atlanta, like in a booth or something like this, or a trade show, convention. Yeah. And so those all stopped. He also did a lot of work for, call it outdoor festivals, where certain industries wanted to be there to show off products and things like that. So all of that stopped. And but on the converse side, saw medical, call it like larger scale surgical implements and just drugs, things that people needed to teach doctors. They asked, his business shifted a little bit, not that they weren't doing it before, but it shifted almost exclusively to that so that he could keep things going, so that they could take these displays into hospital parking lots so doctors could come out. So they've completely reversed, and now it's back the opposite direction, and he's like full bore again because all these things were, COVID be damned, and we're gonna go and have a good time and listen to music or whatever it turns out to be. So I think that the answer is now much longer than I intended it to be, but no, there has not been an industry or a client that's come to me and said, yeah, I think we might have a little bit of a problem. Not even so much a problem. I'm just feeling the constraints and the pressures a little bit more. I would have guessed that the residential home contractors would have felt a little bit there. What I think some of the issues that we might see, if there is, and I'm not saying that there will be, but if there is a contraction in home pricing, let's say that we're not, saying the word bubble and meaning the word bubble, I don't mean it to come off this way. I really hope that we're not. But if there is some kind of inflated price point now, and if you follow any kind of search on residential property, you'll start to see more, instead of the price increases, you'll see the price dropped or the price lowered or whatever it turns out to be, or back on the market or something like that. We're seeing maybe some more of that, where people were out there thinking, I can afford this $1.2 million house or $600,000 house or whatever was your stretch goal when the interest rates were 2.5. But now that they're approaching 6 or more, now it's harder to get comfortable with that large of a build or whatever for your budget. And so I would have expected there to be a little bit more. We're not heavily developer, especially on the residential side. Commercial, I'd say we are pretty well into the commercial development space, but not the retail development space. And so, residential, excuse me. But we still have to worry about people who have overextended themselves on the mortgage side. So you saw, and this was heavily in consumer and credit cards, but some of the bigger players, they did a huge increase to their loan loss provisions, just because they start to worry about those downward pressures on individual households or individuals in general, and they have to concern themselves with what's our real risk now given. And so while we don't necessarily, we always have concerns to this right and proper thing to do as a bank, but I wouldn't say that we are overwhelmingly concerned about our client base at this point, whether consumer or commercial. I think because we know our clients so well. Again, one of the reasons why even in 08 and 09, we did everything that we could to help our clients move through the perils, not just say, give me the keys and you can go now, or you got to go find another bank. That didn't happen as much. And I was at the time working for a much larger institution that they had that mentality. We don't know what's going to happen, so we're just going to pull the plug. And if you've got a $100,000 home equity line of credit, maybe now it's 50, and it's just the way that it was. And so if you recall, and it's a really weird time, people were just drawing on their home equity products so that they didn't have them pulled from them. I still have clients that come up to me and ask me, hey, I haven't used my line in a year. Should I draw on it just to make sure they show some? I'm like, if you don't need the money, don't draw on it. So in the end, it's a very different place. But I don't see, as much as I did then in 07 and 08 and 09, people really feeling, oh, something bad's going to happen.
Well, I think it's fair to say that I guess whatever you want to call normal times. I don't even know how you define that anymore, but whatever you want to call that, industries or whatever category an industry fits in, it's typically at different points in the business cycle, but you can kind of almost lay them over the top of one another from different points in time and see that they tend to more or less fall in a very similar order, historically speaking. Obviously, 08, 09, everyone was below the line. Yeah. It was just from a macro standpoint, everything, no matter what you did, kind of went to hell. Now it seems like the dots on the chart are so heavily fragmented, even within industries, and that's what we see. We could give you examples of markets within our world that are feeling recessionary pressure. What I would call probably more a resetting of inventory, which typically is part of, it's part of the recession. And if you can either it's on the front end if you're good at guessing games, or hopefully not on the back end, because then you're really trying to play catch up. But it's so fragmented, and I feel like that's what we're seeing across so many different industries. Why you could walk down the street and ask 100 people, and 3 might say, "Oh yeah, it's terrible," and 97 say, "No, this is awesome. I'm taking a wheelbarrow full of cash to the bank."
Sure.
Okay, interesting. I was kind of wondering what your answer would be in terms of, we're definitely seeing some points or not, but it doesn't sound like there's an overwhelming yes anywhere.
It's not a client or an industry that we have exposure to per se, but I think that if you look at those luxury recreational vehicles, thinking about RVs and thinking about larger boats, things like that, I think the boat market is still pretty hot. Even if you have like a small tri-tune or a pontoon or a deck boat or something like that, even a fishing boat, just a little schooner. So I think that those things, higher end, we're starting to see pullback. I had a CFO of one of my clients who has some exposure into that through distribution, and they went and visited the northern section of the state, and it definitely felt like the inventory level was very, very high. And if you remember 2020, 21, it was like 6 months out to get yourself even a whiff of a Prescott or something, one of those big RVs. And I think that has always been a leading indicator of recession. I think that they are on the front end when people start to pull back. But again, we are in such a weird place because a lot of people are sitting on a lot of cash and they haven't necessarily all done anything with it. And so it is probably propped up some industries that in the past would have given us pretty heavy indication that there's trouble ahead. And if you listen to same thing, if you have 10 different economists in front of you and you don't know they're talking in the same group about the same subject, you probably get 6 different answers, and 4 of them that might happen to agree with the other 6 in some aspects. But it's just it's so different right now because you can almost make out of it whatever you will, and we're not going to know it till it's too late. Which is one of the reasons I think it's always interesting that we don't normally have an actual official wording that we were in or are in a recession until like a year later. Like they look at the overall data and then say, oh yeah, those 2 quarters right there, that was a recession, but we pulled ourselves out of it. I think they just like the numbers to stabilize overall.
Yeah,
and
that's like telling me it rained after I'm already wet.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for that. But it goes back to the original conversation about inflation's here, unemployment's here, housing starts are here. All of those things that we would normally say they're all going to be one way or the other. Now they're split, and it logically doesn't make any sense to a lot of us. So
you may have answered this indirectly. Is there one key indicator that you're looking at to try to help clear the vision?
I wish there were. I really think that it's so hard right now. The unemployment number, I think, would have normally traditionally given us some really good indication of where we were going. I think 2020 and the amount of shedding of jobs that the economy took on to now having basically built it back and job growth, it's nice to see that there have been jobs created, but you're really creating old jobs that were there before, or new jobs that have just taken that job and made a variation of that job. So that would be a normal one. I think that the inflationary numbers and the pressures that come there, at some point there's going to be a hell of a break point, and families won't be able to do. Another client that manufactures alcoholic beverages, and one of the things that they've seen, because their price point is, say, moderate, low to moderate, like easily access point for individuals who are looking for that particular beverage. And they saw in 2020, 21, and sort of starting to wane back, where their clients have gone up market just a small amount. So where maybe their price point is 7 to 11, now it's 12 to 18 that the people are really going for, and they're going to start to inch their way back, and they're starting to see that demand happen again. So that might be an interesting client to utilize to your question, Joe, where it's more like, have they seen it's the reverse? And the reverse is the indication of the same in the softening, except their business then heats up because people are not able to spend on, instead of going out and buying a bottle of Camus, you go out and buy a bottle of, something from Behringer, in their normal price point. So you're cutting $40 or $50 or $60 out because you could do that when, you had more cash, and now you're not, and you're worried about the future. And so I think that client in particular is a good indicator of, the demand is really high, the stockpile and inventory is starting to wane, and it's going in the direction we need it to. And I think it's because people are feeling the pressure.
Yeah. I mean, we're a consumer-driven economy. So looking at that behavior, I think what we see is not so much at this point consumers leaving the buying pool. It's just that it's being reallocated.
Sure.
So real estate, the person that was going to buy the $1 million home is not going to suddenly leave the market altogether. They may just be resetting the deck to where now they're a $750,000 home buyer.
Sure.
Because either they're concerned about their mortgage payment, the rates may have made what they could afford, or their comfort level change, things like that, but they're not off the sideline entirely.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm not sure, those sin areas, those are ones that just modify themselves. The people who don't have a boat right now, maybe they're not going to buy one, but maybe instead they're going to buy, some kind of other smaller thing, smaller item, or, the people that are just looking to just to get by, that I think that's the thing where inflation comes in. It's not so much the people, to your point, like 3 people are saying this is doom and 7 people are saying this is either normal or better than it was before. Those people are the ones that through this process are going to get hammered the most. The people that, and having grown up in this kind of environment where my parents didn't have much of anything, and so the dollar menu, which we didn't have when we were kids, but the dollar menu was basically just a normal menu when we were kids. It mattered, and so when you double that price point, you have to think about the people who can't handle even that doubling.
Right.
And so that's where I think focus needs to be maintained, and not to say that I'm pushing for social safety nets further than where we are today, but this is who it really hits. And so trying to figure out how we can make everything more attainable and more, more convenient in some ways is a good priority to try to focus our time on, energy.
Yeah.
Well, the next episode we'll debate minimum wage. That ought to be fun.
Yeah, I think so it's funny. I say all that, and then I think about the fact that I was and still pretty much not an advocate for the 15. And the reason being is that, one, you get to a point in which all of that has to trickle back to someone. And so it's going to trickle back to the same people I was just talking about. That $15 minimum wage, or whatever it turns out to be, that's one of the reasons why the dollar menu is $1.99 menu now, because they have to find a way, even in a large franchise, but take it even more to a mom and pop burger place on the corner. They've got to figure out, how do I pay these people? I have a very good friend who owns several pizzerias, and he was having a hard time finding just a dishwasher. That was all he needed. And it was impossible to find somebody, because in the end, you can get more compensation somewhere else than doing that job. And so it just messed up the whole model. And technology is another thing where you go into a McDonald's now and you have greeted by a screen instead of a person with a smile on their face, right? And it's kind of interesting to watch people, because I was in one where the screens weren't working and you had to go talk to the people, and some people just don't know how to do that anymore.
Right.
It's very interesting in this point in our history. So,
well, at that same show in Atlanta, automation was a topic that I heard multiple times. Been there for a long time, but for some reason it stood out to me that I'd heard from 4 or 5 different people that they were looking at machines that were more fully automated to further replace human bodies.
Oh yeah.
And it's only going to increase, I'm sure.
Robots.
Yeah, literally, we have another client who manufactures cookies and think of it as.
You've got
wafers.
free sample day at the bank. You got clients that do booze, clients that do cookies, clients that do pizza. And you didn't bring any of that with you?
There might be some in the car. We'll see. But he is looking now at their plant and trying to figure out how do we better automate all of those processes. Purely because it is getting harder and harder to find people that are quality, that'll stay, that won't jump ship for an extra couple of dollars now. That's not always been a problem, but it seems to be worse now, to the point where he's even thinking about how do I know that a machine and a robot is going to work. And so he's figured out how much it would be just to rent one per month to try to figure out, okay, how can I use this robot to potentially cut back on FTE, full-time equivalent employees, and it's where we're going. Unfortunately, it is it is the future.
Manufacturing in America brought to you by Jarvis.
Yeah.
Well, I
Does
asked.
anybody know that reference? Shout out to my
good.
son, who's a big Marvel movie fan.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with Jarvis.
Iron
Jarvis
Man.
is awesome.
I did ask one of these guys that was looking at that. I said, well, what does that piece of equipment cost? And he told me, and it's not a small number.
Right.
But I said, what's the ROI on that? He's like, under 2 years.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty telling.
Yeah, this particular manufacturer is putting in a couple of different kinds of bagging lines, so literally just the packaging lines. And it is remarkable how fast the payback is and how many human hands it can take out of the mix.
Yeah.
And so even you flip all the way to the other side, and we're talking about a contract manufacturer of pharmaceuticals. So, a larger institution like some of the main players here in the state don't want to do their own filling implements. And so they contract this manufacturer to do them for them. And their line is a very expensive line, and it's beautiful if you like that kind of machinery. And it'll only take 3 people to run it. And this is a line that would probably be the length of this building. And they're only there to make sure if something goes wrong. And the machine actually knows when something goes wrong, so it can actually fix the machine or tell you, hey, come over here, there's something there that's broken, fix that, and we'll be fine and ready to go. But it's remarkable how this technology is moving us forward.
Yeah. We may have to have that person on here as a guest, too. I think we know who you're talking about.
Yes, you would love to do that.
Yeah. Any advice you would give? I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, folks. I mean, things are still extremely busy, extremely active out there. Any piece of advice you would give kind of your average client today?
Yeah. This is the same piece of advice I give to prospects and clients. If you don't have a board of directors, and most of the small businesses, and not even just small business, many of the large businesses don't have a board of directors, a bunch of people who are just there for advice. You need to have a good attorney, a good CPA, a good banker, usually a good financial advisor or manager of just money in general, or and an insurance guy. If I said that already, I might have said that twice, sorry. Those people are there to give you advice, but also to let you bounce ideas off of them, right? Like, this is where I want to go. This is my vision. This is what I think I want to do. And I like to say, of the 3 main people, so the attorney, CPA, and banker, only one of them doesn't have the juice running while you're talking and shooting the bull with them, right? And I'm usually paying for the golf.
Which one is that?
Yeah, I'm usually paying for the golf, paying for food, paying for drinks, whatever it turns out to be. But the bigger picture is, if you have that group of people and you have an idea, and you go to that group of people and you say, this is what I want to do, and you have 2 of them say, that is a terrible idea, don't do that, it's probably not a good idea. And if you have 2 that are saying, that's actually a pretty good idea, let's figure out how we do it, you might have something there. And so people forget that it's not just about tax time. It's not just about, hey, I'm being sued, or hey, I want to sue somebody. It's about the actual conversation or relationship. And one of the things that I really believe is the most important, and probably the reason why I've been successful is it's all a collaboration. Mm-hmm. My favorite conversations happen when you call me and you're like, I think I might be crazy, but let me run something by you. Let's talk about it. Hey, can we go have lunch? Can we go have coffee? It doesn't make a difference. And we sit down and all we do is talk. And there's no impending pressure. There's no, hey, I want $5 million to go buy this building over here and whatever. It's, hey, does this make sense? And what am I missing? Where am I not seeing the thing that you're going to see? And I think people forget that. And then that's, active, that's AB, right? Usually inside of the life cycle. What I think a lot of owners forget, and I cannot stress this enough, is the CD, the exit, the succession, the buy, sell, all of those things that really, I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes until it's too late, right? And so I had this one conversation. I finally got a business owner to sit down with an estate attorney, and he wasn't married, but he had a long-term significant other. They all lived together. He had her three daughters and his two sons. Everyone was under one roof. They were all over the place. And I was like, what happens if you die? He's the only person. He didn't have anything. And he's literally at this point, and the attorney looked at him and said, because one of his sons was getting married, and not mine, he said, nobody likes her. And I'm like, okay, here's what's going to happen. He's going to die. She's going to want whatever she believes he owns of your business, or like the equity in it. And you're going to have a real fight, or they get divorced. Doesn't die, but he has some kind of ownership, and she's going to sue him for it. And he's going to have to force you to sell the company so that he can pay his soon-to-be ex-wife. That is, you could see the color leaving his face because he hadn't thought about it that way. He didn't think it through. And so people don't spend enough time, not just on the sale today. Like, I want to understand, how do I grow my top line? How do I perfect my bottom line? How do I make as much money as I can to take care of my family and my employees, my clients better, whatever it turns out to be. It's, how do I unwind this? If I need to unwind it, what do I do? What happens if I die? And then what happens if I get sued? Insulation from risk. I have other clients who kept all of the real estate in their personal names, and they had like 8 locations. What are you doing? Like, this is all, they're going to sue the bejesus out of you if somebody falls and slips and hurt themselves on your premises. People just aren't giving it enough time, energy, and it's painful, right? Because you're paying for something that you don't necessarily think you have to pay for, but I promise you do. And so those, I think, from AB, really having a conversation and finding a bank that is a relationship-focused bank that really, I enjoy nothing more than sitting around and saying, hey, where are you going? And how can I help you get there? And then the end, how do I prepare and protect my family in the event that something happens to me? Or, like, let's say you two were sole owners of the businesses together, 50-50, and one of you passes away. Vince's wife is now your partner. And you either like her or you don't like her, or same on the other side, Kelly's your partner. Do you really want that problem? Or do you want to have a buy-sell put in place so you know exactly what you're going to pay her or him, depending, so that they are happy and they're out, and so now it's just your business? And people simply don't give enough time to that. And so that is my boxed, this is the advice you should take.
Well, I'd like to echo that by saying we have that pretty well buttoned up through all of our operating agreements. Yeah. And, the next step is having your company own life insurance policies on the partners so that there's ways of funding it, things like that. It may be a few $1,000s in legal fees. It may be annual insurance premiums, and it's worth every penny.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for listeners out there who just heard what Mike had to say, if you don't have a will or family planning, shame on you. Go get it done. And even more so, or not more, even more so, but as well, business planning as well.
Yeah.
If you love your spouse or your children, you got to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a buy-sell in place, having key man insurance in place. I mean, it is night and day. When you, as the surviving partner inside of a partnership, wake up that day and your partner is gone and you realize, I don't even want to get out of bed because I just lost my best friend or my brother or my dad or whoever, and the bank isn't going to stop taking loan payments from me, and my employees still need to work, and it's a rudderless ship. I need something, and that, say you get lucky and you buy a few $1 million and it satisfies all of the debt. And it's just like when we plan for our spouses, if we pass away and we have enough life insurance, things you think about: how much is the mortgage? How much is the whatever car loan? How much is this loan, that loan? Do I have enough in there to pay that off? And then if you ever want the scariest conversation in your life, go to an insurance guy or girl and say, how much do I need to have my wife or my husband live on for the next 20 years and pay for college?
Yeah. Don't forget. So you talk about the debt. Don't forget about college.
I have 4 kids for the viewers out there. How much do I need? And the number is going to make you not want to think about it. It's that bad. It's that big.
Yeah.
And so having any kind of preparation, as Joe said, is a step in the right direction. So
there you go. Free advice for all you listeners. You're welcome. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate the time and all your insight. Thank all of you guys out there for listening or watching on the Assessa YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys tuning in today. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Hit that notification bell so when new episodes like the one here with Mike drops, you will be notified. And don't forget, be industrious.